Everybody glad they tuned in so far? I know I'm not.
Hard rock.
Because I have a checklist that, to be perfectly honest with you, I didn't even look at.
Hard rock.
You want to look at Olympic events that Americans are good at? It's like spending American dollars.
Hard rock.
I'm channeling my inner airbender.
Hard rock.
And I'm not trying to be stereotypical. I'm just trying to be 100% accurate of what they sound like.
Hard rock. Lunch box.
What is up, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Hard Rock Lunchbox. Here we are, Thursday. It's the Thursday after Thanksgiving, which means last week we did the Boxgiving Day countdown, which, to be perfectly honest, seems like a million years ago. I am here today with good news, I think. Maybe. I don't know. Maybe no one cares. I know I don't. But I have a new laptop. Before we get too excited, the reason I have a new laptop is because my old laptop started drawing a little line right on the screen going across, which could have been fine, except it kept growing and eventually will end up not being a laptop so much as just a brick. So I decided it was time, but also what factored is I had Dell points. I had Dell bucks, Dell dollars, Dell reward dollars that were going to expire, and my rep just gave me a really good deal on whatever the hell I have here. So, and included in my Dell bucks so that I could be cool and have a new laptop. Now, what I had hoped for, more than anything, was that my Logitech camera, which is right here, there, the one that constantly reminds me of my performance issues, thank you very much, that's kind of dick. I thought, I have to flip this, hang on. Is that better? Yeah. Yes, I like that much better. Something about root beer. So when you watch this, and I just flipped the screen, don't worry. It's just literally setting this up. But what I was going to say is that I was hoping that my Logitech that constantly tells me I have problems because it wasn't a USB 3, because it was an older laptop, would stop being such a bitch about things, because now I have a USB 3 port. So I plugged it in with an adapter because Logitech sends a USB-C, which is crap, by the way. And it still gave me the same message. So now I'm still kind of recording in, and I'll double check right now. It's terribly unprofessional to do it while I'm doing it, but yeah, there it is. 30 frames per second instead of the 60 frames per second that it's supposed to be, and I don't know why that is. And also, I would like to point out that I do not at all appreciate the Logi logo that's showing there. Because I don't want that. So clearly your host is going to have to do some work on the side, but he's probably not, and honestly would burn out the entire top 20 just trying to fix this. But I just, you know what, honestly, I don't care. I'll bury it in the screen right, hang on, there. So now it'll be on like my white pole that's right there. So even though the Logi thing is, hang on, I'm doing it right about there, it can go F itself, because nobody will see it. Until I do that, then everyone will see it. It'll be like an optical illusion. Everybody glad they tuned in so far? I know I'm not. Yes, chat. You can join the chat. 99WNRR.com. Go to hardrocklunchbox.com. There's a link to bring you to the live show. And yes, Dell exists. Dell is actually still one of the biggest computer distributors and manufacturers on Earth. In fact, a lot of times when you go to buy things, they are Dell products, like the Vostro and stuff like that, and the Inspiron. These are like the most common laptops in workplaces on Earth. You have HP and you have Lenovo, but I have a Dell because I don't have a Dell because she's she's a sentient human being, and I cannot have one of those. But I do have a Dell personal laptop right now that is basically being a bitch. Actually, I don't know who the bitch is. It could be Logitech. It could be Dell. It could be me. I'm fully capable of being a bitch. I don't like how much it's shaking. Like, I'm not in Los Angeles. It's not earthquake season. How's that? Is that better? But I'm still shaking. But also me. So, 5 minutes in, probably time to start the show. Yay! Man, I hate how dumb I am sometimes. I mean, not dumb as in unintelligent, just dumb as in... I just cannot get out of my own way sometimes. You know what I mean? Like, I cannot do it. By the way, is my camera... I think my camera is sideways. I wonder if it's been sideways this whole time. I don't know. I don't care. I'm just trying to fix the chat. Okay. I set this up early, like, and by set it up, I mean plugged it in. But clearly, I did make sure that it worked, but I didn't catch all the little things. Like, I'm sorry, man. I'm just a terrible host. Like, it just is a super unprofessional show, and that's just what's happening now. Let me even check, like, just making sure. Yeah. I wanted to make sure we're even recording this, because that sounds... Because I have a checklist, but to be perfectly honest with you, I didn't even look at it. If you don't look at your checklist in the woods, is it even there? Or is that, like, tree falling? Never mind. Let's start the show, shall we? Yay! So, yeah, I hope everybody had a good Thanksgiving, or whatever they did with their prior week. I celebrated Thanksgiving by doing everything the wrong way and then getting sick on Sunday. So I am coming out of having a pretty substantial cold Monday and Tuesday, but I'm feeling a little bit better now, so that's good. Things are moving along here. Thanks for asking. We're moving along on the Revel 9 record. I know you guys are all excited. As everyone posts their Spotify stuff, it's nice to see that in our local community, like Craving Strange reigns supreme. Despite not being the number one band of the box ever. Right, Jimmy?
It's always a no!
Craving Strange actually doing the work and putting out new material in 2022 for people to listen to. It's nice to see those. I always have such issues with those Spotify statistics because they're just so weird and they're so all over the place. And honestly, they're only one metric. Like, it's really hard to kind of like pin down like how your career is doing, because like honestly my career feels like it's doing absolutely nothing, and yet I look at statistics like that, it's like, okay, well, people do still listen, so I must be doing something, but like, am I like am I actually doing anything? Like, it just doesn't feel like it. Like, I think the market has changed and the business has changed so much that I don't even know what I don't even know what I'm doing at this point, and that's, you know, I guess probably indicative of the problem, and I should probably shut up and just move on. So here in December, we are absolutely in the slide towards Christmas and New Year's. Everything is going to get pretty lax. People are going to stop caring a lot because that's what you do at the holidays. But one thing I did kind of notice... Oh, by the way, before I forget, on Strangerhood TV, you can catch the top 20 from last week's episode. It's just a quick, like, thank you and all that other stuff about gratitude and stuff. You want to check that out. But if you missed the countdown, most of the music are local bands, which I have rights to do, so you can actually... rights to play, so you can actually check it out. Like, you can download the Hard Rock Lunchbox podcast. It's on Spotify, it's on Apple. You can go right to hardrocklunchbox.com and listen to it there. All of the episodes are available there. And like I said, I'm only allowed to play music that I have specifically the rights to, so something that's actually been sent in. That's all I can really keep on the podcast. But most of the bands on that countdown are local, so if you missed it, please check it out. Look for it on Spotify. It's there. Like I said, Apple Music or anywhere you get your podcasts. You can check out that whole episode. And, of course, Hard Rock Lunchbox rock.com. So that's available, plus all the other good programming. Check out the latest stuff from Vegas, my podcast. I know the BIMPYs are coming up pretty soon. I think those are in January, so definitely be on the lookout. They've released the nominees for like the top BIMPY awards. I will say this collection of people pales in comparison to last year's collection of people. I may be biased. I am probably biased. And I'm definitely biased, so that's okay. It's time to give somebody else a turn at being second best at some questions. That's the way I'm looking. Okay. So as I was saying, we have now passed Thanksgiving, so we have our moment of gratitude, and then we kind of seep into December, which is the time basically to treat people around us the absolute worst we possibly can. Right? So that's good. But at least we're here, and at least we know. I will say the one thing about Thanksgiving and the slide into Christmas that interests me every single year, and it really starts right after Thanksgiving, because they have invented this holiday called Giving Tuesday. You might have heard of it. You might have heard of it because it's basically a marketing campaign, and I have a lot of issues with this. As you might be surprised, but I have an issue with this, and it's basically... It basically stems from the amount of charity that your average person is not only asked to give, kind of expected to give, and feels compelled to give, and also wants to give. And that's why it creates such a rub for me. And I have found... Most people don't think about it this much because most people are normal, but whenever I discuss it with them, a lot of times people are like, yeah, man, why is that? And it just bothered me for years, like for absolute years. And again, it really rubs up against my sort of charitable, what I consider to be like a good, kind of Christian, whatever, help fellow man kind of thing. Like whatever the charity version of my moral compass is, like, was instilled in me in a very young age by my parents and my family and stuff like that, and it relates to how I treat people and also how I feel about people in need. Now, over the past couple of years, maybe even coming up on a decade at this point, like I've really taken some serious objection to people who push back on something as simple as, say, like universal health care, because I don't understand what the pushback is. I mean, yes, people will, inflate and conflate and just basically make up horror stories of what it's like to live in a socialist country and deal with socialized medicine. Like, you have to understand, like, most of our medicine in the U.S. is socialized. Like, it is. Like, people with, Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid and anybody that's involved in the VA for veterans, like, that's all government-run healthcare. Like, our soldiers, our grandparents, our, illest among us, socialized medicine. And nobody's complaining about that, but they're complaining about Canada or Cuba. Like, Cuba's one of the poorest countries in the world for a few reasons, but mainly because we basically cut them out of the tourism game for so long, right? Like, Americans are good at really one thing: spending American dollars. Like, that's, like, you want to look at Olympic events that Americans are good at, it's like spending American dollars. Like, everyone's bitching about inflation and the economy and all that other stuff, but it's not slowing anybody down. In fact, they just set a record for Cyber Monday, right? They literally set a record for Cyber Monday. Now, they do say that a lot of it might be because everything is more expensive, and like that's why. But people are still spending that money, right? Like, it's, oh my God, Biden's doing all this damage to the economy. Here's $20, get me a straw or whatever. Like, just people just. I'm centering. I'm channeling my inner airbender. That's what I'm doing. You can see my little airbender, little avatar for you. What was I saying? So just sort of talking about that sort of stuff, right? Like, so people kind of complain about that. Now, think about most charities. Now, I'm going to accept a few things, right? Natural disasters, right? Like, I feel like that is a separate thing. communities and neighborhoods should come together and help each other, help those members out when something goes wrong. I've always believed that. But the simple fact that, like, on Giving Tuesday, which, as I was saying before, is basically this made-up holiday to follow Cyber Monday. Well, everyone's spending money on themselves and their family. Like, don't forget to give to those less fortunate than us. Now, those less fortunate than us could be anything. They could be poor people that are actually less fortunate than us. They could be people that have diseases or illnesses that, like, are expensive to cure or expensive to treat, which is... Why is that? Like, I understand that things cost money, but, like, if we had universal health care, like, would we need that? And then, like, the number of times that I have donated to those causes and the number of times that I've donated my professional time, like, as a singer-songwriter or as a band, to causes like, how many times have we done, like, benefit shows for veterans? Like, I've done at least 20 that I can think of probably off the top of my head. And I must tell you that every time I do them, half of me is like, I wonder why we have to do this. Like, are we as a country not taking care of our veterans? Like, isn't that kind of the deal? Are we as a country not taking care of those less fortunate than us? And the answer is yes. And that's why they're turning to us for charity. By itself, it makes sense. Like, I understand. But the thing that really pissed me off on this particular Giving Tuesday is that I got a message, and it was probably even before it, because you want to get out in front, right, before everybody spends their allocation of charity dollars, is that I got an email from Northwell Health. Northwell Health is a hospital system here in the Northeast. I don't know how expansive it is. But they asked in a form letter written clearly by a lawyer or PR company to donate money to those less fortunate, those in need of treatment for, like, advanced cancers and stuff like that, because that costs money. Now, if you didn't know that Northwell Health was a hospital organization, one of the largest, by the way, because people are monopolizing that too. Monopoly is definitely a subject for another show. But if you did not know that, you might remember, or it might sound familiar, the name Northwell Health, because they own Jones Beach Theater. Now, I don't like counting other people's money. I think it's kind of grimy and gross. I do, on occasion, wonder how people afford things that they afford, given what they kind of do for a living, and I kind of wonder that on a social level, but not on a, want to know the details of their existence. And in that vein, it makes me wonder thusly. I have been to Jones Beach Theater. I've been there maybe 100 times, maybe more in my life, and I've seen concerts there, and I've really enjoyed it. It's one of my favorite places. It's one of my 3 favorite places to see a show. I have gone there often. Recently, I don't know that I can go there and rent a seat for 3 hours for less than, like, say, $50. Fair? I did not mean to hit that button. I know there's a lot of seats there, so I can only imagine how much money it actually costs to own that theater. And I wonder where that money came from. And if they had all that money to buy that theater, why the fuck do they need more money from me to pay for advanced cancer treatments? Like, does this not add up to everybody? Like, they are literally spending money on not what they do and asking me for money to cover the expenses of what they do, which is already on the back of, why isn't this already covered? And the reason it's not already covered is because we don't have universal health care. for everybody that bitches and complains about Obamacare, which is technically known as the ACA, the Affordable Care Act. By the way, if you ever want to really like enjoy yourself, why don't you watch people do man-on-the-street interviews where they talk to people, especially the dumber Republicans, and I'm not saying all Republicans are dumb, that's not what I'm saying, but dumber Republicans that really think Obamacare is just garbage and socialist and communist and all that other stuff. When they talk about that, they ask them flat out, like, what do you think about Obamacare? Well, I think it's socialist, and my guns, and this is my cousin Bobby that I married. Like, you know, that kind of stuff. And I'm not trying to be stereotypical. I'm just trying to be 100% accurate of what they sound like. So as soon as they ask him that, Obamacare is the devil. And then they start asking him questions about what's actually in the Affordable Care Act. And they're like, well, I think I'd be good with that. The fact of the matter is that like upwards of like 80 and 90% of the people that are asked about specific things in the Affordable Care Act think it's a good idea, because basically it's based on Medicare, Medicaid, and what we do in the VA already, like solidly American things that we do already. But the pushback on it was because it was named Obamacare, which they did on purpose, by the way. Obama did not name it Obamacare. He's not like some other narcissistic presidents that we've had recently. He didn't name it Obamacare. The Republicans named it Obamacare so that they could bash it because Republicans just didn't like Obama. See, clever, right? Like, what am I trying to say? I am so goddamn tired. My point is that I don't know why we have to constantly give to charities at home for things that really should be already handled in our society. I Googled quickly because I wanted to know kind of like what was going on in like Sweden, right? Sweden is famously as socialistic as it can get without being, you know, Cuba, right? So, you know, the tax rate in Sweden is high, but everybody in Sweden is cool with it because even with that high tax rate, they don't have to pay anything for schools. They don't have to pay anything for health care. All of their housing is done at like reasonable rates and stuff because the banks don't own it. The banks aren't really invested in that kind of stuff. So it's kind of super easy to just live, right? So if you paid all of your taxes, if you paid all your taxes and it was a lot, right? Even let's say you paid like half, right, in taxes, but you didn't have to pay for another goddamn thing. Like, how many of us would be okay with that? Like, how many of us would be all right? Not paying for healthcare? Like, I'm not talking about like right out, like just paying for the policy. I'm talking about deductibles, co-pays, minimums and stuff like that. Like, I know, like, I have dental insurance that is doing absolutely dick. In fact, I think it's costing me more money at this point to actually have the dental insurance, which is bananas. But so just imagine that. You don't have to pay for any of that. No healthcare, no co-pays, no pharmacy bills. You don't have to pay for any school. College is covered. You don't have to, like, you know, do bake sales so that your kids can have books and whiteboard. And that's another charity that bothers me. Like, I donate so much. My niece Jordan, like, every year she does like some weird run. And honestly, I don't even read all the details because she's my niece. And if she needs $50 she shall have. But she's doing some run to raise money for her school and her class. And it's like, shouldn't we be covering that? Like, why are we paying for that? Like, I've already paid for that. Like, where is all that money going? And people just bitch and bitch and bitch about, like, the amount of money these things cost. And it's like, but giving, like, tax breaks to corporations and all that other stuff is completely fine, even though if somebody like Elon Musk paid, you know, what he should, if he paid the same tax rate that I do, for example, we'd probably be able to pay for all that stuff. And we should be able to pay for all that stuff. And it shouldn't come out of our pockets after the fact that we have to donate for these basic things. So I Googled this stuff in Sweden. You know what I found? I found a lot of charities, like 400 NGOs. Almost all of them are related to, like, climate change. There's always good sex trafficking, you know, stuff. People trying to prevent that because people are animals. Speaking of animals, there's always good, like, animal causes and stuff like that. But you know what's not there? Like, there really isn't, like, let's raise money for Billy's cancer because his treatment isn't covered. Because insurance doesn't cover it. And there's also, like, nobody in Sweden is raising money for their smart board because that's covered too. And that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. And I don't abhor charity or charitable donations of time or money. I think if you feel strongly about those things, or there are people close to you, absolutely you should help them if you can, if you are able. But my point is, and maybe just give it some consideration the next time, an election comes around, is why do we have to come to us to pay for things that we are already technically paying for with our taxes? Why is that? Why aren't all of our health concerns covered? Why aren't all of our education costs covered? There are 2 Republican states right now that are suing the Biden administration and preventing 400 million borrowers from getting money back on their student loans. Now, as much as I think the plan was flawed and really needs to be revisited anyway. They're literally suing. No, 40 million, not 400 million. That's bananas. 40 million people. We don't want them to get that money. $40 million. That's 40 million people. That's nothing. That's really nothing. But they don't want people to have it. Why? Why isn't it covered anyway? What kind of society do we really want to be where we have to dole out like a buck? Like, I don't mind the Salvation Army looking for money, but like, why? Why do we have to donate our spare change so people don't freeze to death? Like, does anybody else see that as a problem? Like, this should not be an issue, and this should not be something that we have to cover with our stuff. And toys for kids, like, why do... It never ends. And the ask of us, the regular people, the normal people, the usual people, the ask of us is exhausting, and never ends. And I don't know why that is. And I don't know why people aren't asking more questions. Like, am I going to donate so that somebody has enough money so that their parents can stay at the Ronald McDonald House with their kids while they're, undergoing treatment? You bet your ass. Should I have to? Nope. That should be something that we as a society do. But we as a society don't. And I guess what I'm asking is, what kind of society are we? And what kind of society do you want to be? I'd like to be better than that. But that's just me, and I run a stupid radio show. I did the countdown last week. A Day to Remember came in number 2, and I played Second Sucks because it seemed funny to do that. But truly, as many A Day to Remember songs as I love, still one of my favorite isn't even theirs.